My God, I hate drugs.
Giniit ni Special Assistant to the President Bong Go na hindi pa ang kampanya para sa susunod na eleksyon ang kanyang meet and greet event sa Korea. Ayon sa kalihim, malayo pa sa isip niya ang 2019 senatorial election. Nasa Korea raw siya para samahan ng Pangulo at pasayahin ang mga Pilipino na nagtatrabaho roon. Pero ang mga kasama ni Go sa gabinete tulad ni Communications Secretary Martin Andanar, payagang ikinampanya ang kalihim sa pagka-senador. Habang ang aktor na si Robin Padilla, inimok naman ng mga Pilipino sa Korea na suporta ng kalihim, hindi lamang sa pagtakbong senador, kundi bilang susunod na Pangulo.
The summer break is over for most kids. Classes in all public and some private schools open today. More than 27 million students are returning to schools nationwide, and it's all hands on deck for the Department of Education, with Secretary Leonor Briones leading the way. Secretary Briones will attend a flag-raising ceremony at the DepEd headquarters in Pasig, then make the rounds in some schools, beginning with the Quezon City High School in Diliman. Metro Manila Police Chief Guillermo Eliazar says 9,000 police personnel have been deployed. The first batch under the K-12 program finished high school this year, despite the government's promise that they can't land jobs even without a college degree. Many are doubting this. Tristan Nodalo looks into what's in store for our new graduates in this special report.
Charmaine Cardona dreams of becoming a medical doctor in the future, but she admits fulfilling this dream will be a financial challenge.
Plano ko po kasi talaga nung una, mag-work po habang nag-enter ng college kasi po para makatulong din po sa pagbabudget ng pera.
Cardona is among the first batch of senior high school graduates this year under the Education Department's K-12 program. And like some of her peers, life after senior high means finding a job to help the family make ends meet.
Sa family po namin, malaking challenge yun. Lalo na po syempre hirap din po kami sa buhay. Syempre yung pagbabudget po ng pera para sa pang-araw-araw, yung paggastusin po namin, tsaka expenses din po sa school.
But Cardona and her batchmates are uncertain about getting employed after graduation.
Since senior high graduate pa lang naman po kami, parang iniisip po namin na baka hindi po kami tanggapin ng ibang company since yun po, kulang po kami sa experience. Gano'n.
Cardona, senior high school teacher, says most senior high school graduates choose to go to college instead of finding work.
They wanted to go to college and they wanted to finish that and advance their learning. Well, some are having second thoughts. That is why we conduct career guidance orientation.
A success and beyond expectations, this is how the Education Department describes its senior high school program under the K-12. Over 1.2 million students finished this year, dismissing fears of a high dropout rate. Even as they are now qualified to land a job, most K-12 graduates may have this question in mind. Will companies accept them with their credentials?
A recent Job Street survey shows only 24% of employers are willing or ready to hire K-12 graduates, while less than half remain unsure or are still evaluating the graduates' readiness to work.
They were willing to hire K-12 graduates kasi their openings kasi are more on entry level, which are not, kumbaga, require a college degree. These are, for example, yung mga openings for customer service. We've seen BPO companies na kahit college undergraduate, they're willing to hire.
Employers hope there will be more dialogues with the Education Department and stakeholders to make sure skills taught in senior high school will match jobs waiting for them.
Number one pa rin dito yung attitude. It's similar even with college graduates. As long as that K-12 graduate has the right attitude towards work, has a positive attitude, kumbaga.
The Education Department expects that more senior high school students this year, and they want to keep the momentum going for the K-12.
We almost got 100% of the grade 10 completers proceeding to grade 11.
And even as challenges face the K-12 program in its initial phase, the Education Department hopes Filipinos will see its benefit in the long run.
We have more students now who are equipped, who we would like to say are more ready in the world of work if they want to work and they don't want to proceed to college.
After finishing senior high school, Charmaine chooses to go to college for now. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
A year after the siege of Marawi, City schools there are now ready to reopen. The Education Department says classes will resume today in Marawi, even if some schools in Ground Zero are still under rehabilitation. Outside Ground Zero, at least 15 out of nearly 50 schools have been open since September. DepEd also says returning students will have temporary learning spaces and will get free school supplies and hygiene kits. Last year, the agency ordered schools nationwide to accept student evacuees from Marawi even without documentation. Moving on to another top story, relatives of basketball players Jeron Teng, Norbert Torres, and Tomas Torres are looking to file charges against the suspects involved in the BGC stabbing incident. Doctors are still closely monitoring the condition of athletes after they were injured early Sunday morning in Taguig. The suspects are now under the custody of the Taguig City Police as authorities are still looking into who started the fight. The Tang family says Jeron and his friends did not initiate the brawl, but the suspects are saying they were only acting in self-defense.
Sila po nagsimula, sir. Bakit kayo may panaksak? Kahit ba nagsimula, bakit sir? Kasi po pinagtulungan po ako, sir. 4 po ang sumunggab sa akin. Sino apat? Hindi ko na po makilala kasi po wala po akong salamin. Sinutok po ako, nawala yung salamin ko. Then, they grabbed me, they pinned me down.
Relatives of the victims are expected to file charges of frustrated homicide and serious physical injury against the suspects today. Israeli soldiers on Friday killed 1 Palestinian and injured at least 100 others in Gaza along the fence that separates the territory from Israel. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the person killed was identified as a 21-year-old medical nurse. CNN's Ian Lee reports from Gaza.
A young medic's final moments. Razana Najjar races to help an injured Palestinian protester, hands raised in the air. International law protects medics. But minutes later, an Israeli sniper killed the 21-year-old east of Khan Yunis. Her friends struggled, but failed to save her life. A bullet wound to the chest. She died just hundreds of meters from her neighborhood, now adorned with her smiling image. We meet Razan's father, Ashraf. He takes us inside their home. Her mother, Sabrine, clutches her daughter's blood-soaked vest. The sorrow weighs heavily. She tells me they were scared for Razan, but that she alleviated their fears, telling them she felt obliged to help and was clearly wearing a medical vest. Ashraf and Sabrine now want accountability for their daughter's death. I want justice for Razan. Here is her weapon. I want the world to know this is the weapon of Razana Najjar. Razan worked the front lines during the weekly protests near the Israel-Gaza border fence. Just last month, she explained to the New York Times why she risked her life.
صح ممكن الإسعاف بس برضو يعني إحنا إلنا دور كبير في هذا الإشي. إحنا هدفنا واحد هو بس إنقاذ وإخلاع ونوصل رسالة للعالم إنه إحنا بدون سلاح قادرين نعمل كل إشي.
Israel's military says it's investigating El Najjar's death, adding the IDF constantly works to draw operational lessons and reduce the number of casualties in the area of the Gaza Strip security fence. Medical workers protested outside a UN office in Gaza City. All believe Israeli snipers are deliberately targeting them, a charge the Israeli military denies. Razana Najjar is the second medic killed by an Israeli sniper, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. More than 200 were also injured, many wearing vests like this. Russia and Abdulaziz were with Razan when she died. They tell me they'll remember her for her bravery and will more than ever continue where she left off. Ian Lee, CNN, Gaza.
And inflation figures are coming out this week, and the Finance Department says prices of goods and services in May are likely to be higher compared to that of last year. And to help us understand this, we have CNN Philippines business analyst Mike Alimurong. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good morning, Christine. I'm fine.
Well, Mike, what's the expected inflation rate in May as it keeps getting higher and higher?
Right. Prices of goods and services continue to rise, with May inflation expected at 4.9% year-on-year from April's 4.5%. Now, while DOF, Department of Finance, insists that prices increases are softening month-on-month, what that really means is that the prices are rising more gradually. The reality is consumers are already feeling the effects of higher prices. The more important measure to look at is how prices compare on a year-to-year basis, as that really gives a sense of how much more expensive goods and services are, taking into account seasonality. Now, even if inflation begins to ease, which hopefully it will at some point, it's unlikely for prices to come back down once they've been raised, particularly if there's a sense that the cost of goods and services will continue to rise.
Okay, well, Mike, with that, you mentioned something about the higher prices and it doesn't seem to be going down. Do you think the government can do anything at this point to help us out?
Well, there's a lot that government can do. One thing that you could do is temporarily suspend fuel excise taxes when fuel prices are high. Now, that may help increase the financial burden with respect to fuel. However, the price of other goods and services which have already been increased may not follow suit. Another thing you can do is explore providing subsidies, particularly for the poor or most impacted by price increases. And in many areas, government is already doing that. For example, free tuition in state colleges and universities being one, and also with PhilHealth. You definitely ensure sufficient supply of basic commodities, particularly things like such as rice and vegetables, to really avoid artificial price increases. You can consider raising interest rates further to control inflation. And then finally, potentially increase wages.
Well, Mike, fuel prices, we've been watching this closely the past few weeks, and we've actually seen, the successive weeks increase and hopefully decrease with all the importing of oils that's coming in. Do you think this will help ease the burden on consumers?
Well, definitely lower fuel prices will help ease the burden on consumers, but only slightly. While fuel prices have been really been impacted or really under pressure the last 2 weeks with supply disruptions in areas such as Venezuela and Iran. The analysts believe that the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries will take action if prices fall too much, oil prices fall too much below $70 a barrel. So understand further that fuel prices is just one of the many components of consumer spending. Christine?
And speaking of spending, Mike, what advice do you have for us consumers?
Yes, as always, prioritize the essentials, the basic commodities. If you need to, seek alternatives where possible, like walking when the destination is nearby or purchasing unbranded equivalents. Cook more often and hold off on big purchases that you can do without until you have enough of financial cushion.
Okay. And then lastly, Mike, what's the market outlook for this week? Hopefully good?
Well, the market outlook for the week, the peso did weaken slightly at 52.55 pesos to a dollar, despite the Bangko Central's higher interest rate of 3.25%. Analysts predict that the peso may weaken further by the end of the year, particularly as inflation remains high and the United States Federal Reserve signals that they will likely raise interest rates as well. As a result, it may make sense to continue looking at dollar-denominated investments where possible. Now, the Philippine Stock Exchange, on the other hand, rebounded 1.78% to close at 7,630.26. The stock market, however, continues to remain in a wait-and-see mode. With inflation going up, fuel prices remaining high, the peso weakening versus the dollar, and the potential for higher wages impacting companies' profitability, investors are waiting for a positive catalyst to jump back in.